If I were starting over and wanted to sound like a real jazz guitarist sooner, I wouldn't start with theory, technique, and the fake book. I'd learn it the same way I learned rock and blues, by ear. When I was young, I listened to music all the time, and then I learned to play it. And if we do the same thing with jazz, we can develop a better feel for the music and a more intuitive understanding of it. I'm Dr. George, and I make jazz simple so that you can play more and think less. The biggest mistake I made learning jazz was trying to learn it through theory and the fake book instead of through sound. And the tricky part is it's kind of a seductive trap because it sort of works. When I started to learn to solo, I was taught to think in terms of scales, arpeggios, and playing the right notes over each chord. It feels like a shortcut because it's either right or wrong. And you're told that if you play the right notes, you'll sound like jazz. And to be fair, it can sound okay. But even when I was playing the right notes, it never sounded quite the way I wanted it to. It felt more like solving a puzzle than telling a story. I could get through it, but I wasn't really hearing it, and when I tried to learn licks from books or transcriptions, they never quite fit. There was always something missing. But what I really had in mind was more like this. The fake book was another side of the same coin. It's a great resource. It gave me access to hundreds of tunes, even ones I'd never heard before. But that was also part of the problem because I was learning tunes I didn't really know. So they were hard to memorize and I had trouble recalling them because instead of thinking about the sound of the music, I was thinking about the notation. And without the fake book, I was lost. At some point, I realized something that should have been obvious from the start. I learned rock and blues by ear, so why wasn't I learning jazz the same way? And once I made that shift, everything changed. Because jazz isn't as complicated as it's made out to be. It just looks that way when you're trying to rely on your head and your fingers instead of your ear. If you start with sound, it becomes much more natural. Now that doesn't mean theory isn't useful. It is. But there has to be a balance between your ears and your head and your fingers, and your ears have to be in charge. So I started doing things differently. I put the fake book away, and I started learning melodies by ear. And when I did, they started to flow. I was able to remember them, and I understood them better, too. Here's how I learn a song now. Tune comes to mind, and if I can sing it, I try to play it. If I can't sing it clearly, I go back and listen to it. And then I find it on the guitar. After that, I'll work out the chords, and this was where a little bit of theory can help. So here's an example of a tune I learned just the other day. Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World. Of course, I've played it before, but I never really learned it. It just popped into my head, and so I sang it and learned the melody. Then I worked out the chords and practiced it a little bit, and I played it on a gig that night. Now, when soloing, I stopped thinking about notes and chords and thought about the song instead. I started playing what I could actually hear, knowing what sound my fingers were going to produce before I played it. So here's the secret. The reason I can do that now is because I started listening to jazz the same way I used to listen to rock and blues, all the time, over and over again. It stopped being something I studied once in a while and became music I loved. Each time you listen, you'll hear more details. One of my students said to me recently, "You hear so much more than I do." And that's one of the ways that I help adult guitarists, by pointing out what they don't hear yet so that they can start hearing jazz more clearly, playing it more musically, and knowing what to work on next. Playing by ear is just a completely different experience. You develop a deeper, more intuitive understanding of the music. Your solos become more expressive and more connected to the song. It's less stressful because you're not constantly worrying about being right. And honestly, it's just more enjoyable. I have fun playing music again. If you want help making jazz finally click using my simple ear-first approach, I offer a free one-to-one jazz guitar lesson. We'll look at your playing, identify what's getting in the way, and map out a clear next step based on where you are right now. The link is below. Music is a story, not a puzzle, and if you want to tell that story in a way that actually sounds like jazz, your ears have to lead the way. That's the mistake I made, and that's why if I were starting over, I'd begin with sound first. And if you'd like to see how to use this method to learn tunes, check out this video.